we made it. It's the last one of the day. Who's been here since morning? Or is it all new faces? Or who was here early in the morning at 10? Okay, good for you. All right, last one of the day. Save the best one for the last. This panel is titled TGE, A Look Inside the War Room. We have Claire here, who was here earlier in the morning, but a bunch of new faces. I would pass it off to the moderator, Nimita. Nimita, am I pronouncing it correctly? Take it away.
Hello. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Let's get started. So I want to rewind back a year ago. Market conditions were strong. We were coming off an inauguration rally, ETF approvals, and the regulatory landscape in the US flipped to pro-crypto basically overnight. So token projects were racing to launch their tokens to gain some of that momentum alongside that wave. And there was a token listing report that launched last year, prepared by Animoca, that said about 150,000 token launches per month, which is about 5,000 token launches a day, each with an average relevancy span of about 12 days. So in 2 weeks, from the date of your TGE, you have your token users jumping to the next project, sort of the next hot narrative. And so even with strong market conditions, it was hard to compete amongst all the noise. So sort of fast forward to now, to today, in a very different sort of market with different conditions, those same projects, a lot of them are down 70 to 80% in terms of their TGE initial trading value. And the report that dropped for this year said last week that it dropped, about 25% of token launches are down as a whole. So what's interesting is that there's actually an opportunity right now because there's a lot less competition and a lot less noise. So projects with strong fundamentals and good product and PMF actually have a decent chance right now to maintain relevancy and market share with long-term token holders. So without further ado, I'd like to share with you guys some war heroes that we have here on our stage, all of who have been involved in launch tokens and have war stories that they're wanting to share with us today, candidly. And so let's start with introductions. If you want to state your name, your project, and a quick one-liner about your experience in TGE or your role.
Yeah, hi, I'm Claire Cart. I'm the CMO at Aztec. We're Privacy L2 on Ethereum. We are 8 days into being a live token, so very much a recent thing for us.
Woo.
Thank you so much. And what's my one-liner about the state of TGEs? I mean, it's just never easy. That's all I'm going to say. You launch in a bull, you launch in a bear, and they both have their challenges, and it's never easy. My perspective is like, launch, get to market, right? Don't try to time the market. We can get into it more.
And congrats, Claire. That's awesome. Welcome to the market. It's a great market, the best market. But in general, Jake, VP of GTM at Zero Gravity, we have built a operating system for AI comprising of a layer 1 blockchain, a decentralized storage solution, a data availability layer, and a compute network. And those are the meat and potatoes that allow AI to run on-chain for all these exciting use cases that we're building today. And of course, that instrument of the token secures the value of a lot of the ways that the services are provided, the blockchain is ran, and of course, we wanted to get it out there so we could go live with the mainnet solutions and start scaling the protocol. And now we here are today, meeting with great people and talking about the story.
All right. Sounds impressive. My name is Kevin March. I'm one of the co-founders of JPEG Trading. JPEG Trading is a high-frequency trading firm that's also done quite a bit of market making over the last year. Our product is, we trade a lot and we try really hard to make money. And on the current state of the market, I'd say it's just as busy as ever. Like the tactics and what the state of the market looks like has changed. But it hasn't changed what the pipeline looks like. And there's still a billion projects, and everyone's looking for their chance at the plate. So, like Claire said, the time is as soon as you can. It's not trying to time it.
Amazing. Thank you guys for that perspective. So, hi everyone. I'm your moderator, Nimita, and I'm the founder of Takat TGE, which is a token launch, legal, and regulatory advisory. So let's jump right into the heart of today's panel and its namesake, the TGE War Room. Obviously, a project's war room is a mission control. It's where it's frontline troops and standby troops and all the third parties that are involved in a token launch come together in a room, either virtual or in real life or a hybrid, and they make very important decisions about their token launch through a lot of chaos. So let's start with the freshest TGE that we have in the room. Claire, you guys launched 6 days ago. Walk us through your war room and the vibes.
Yeah, so we had a hybrid model. We have a headquarters in London. That's where the original founding team was headquartered, but we are a remote first kind of hybrid company. So we had a live room in London. That team was meeting like all week and then really war rooming kind of the 24 hours beforehand. And then we also had like a hybrid war room, which included, all of our employees who aren't co-located in London, like myself, as well as like third parties, right? So a lot of different groups. Like we did our token sale on Uniswap, and like the V4 pool needed to go live at the time of TGE, and so there was like lines into Uniswap and market makers and all of that. But we treat everything at Aztec like very, very cross-functionally, and so we had people from my team, marketing, as well as product, engineering, CFO, finance, obviously the founders. And so it was very, very cross-functional. I'd say the vibes were high. Everybody was like really excited. And nervous, and there's always things that you run into that you just absolutely cannot anticipate, and then how do you kind of adjust and go along? So really stressful, but like some of my closest work friends I've made through TGEs, where it's like you've gone through hell and you're going to be friends forever, and it felt like that, right? Building relationships and getting through it.
You build best friends through the war story. So Claire, be honest, how much sleep did you actually get last week?
I did not get a lot of sleep. I have the advantage of being a mom to 2 toddlers, so I never sleep anyway, and so that gives me a huge advantage. And I can pretty much run on 0 sleep and still appear to be somewhat put together. So that's my secret.
Well, you look well rested, so congrats.
Thank you.
All right, Jake. So Zero G took a slightly different approach, and you guys had your TGE in Korea alongside Korean Blockchain Week, which, for those of you that have been, is one of the largest conferences in Asia for cryptocurrency. Sounds like a lot of chaos to embed your token launch operations. Walk us through the thought process there and how it all evolved.
So that was a educated decision. When we looked at the community of Zero G, there's kind of the segmented groups that exist on Telegram or on certain dedicated X accounts. And Korea by far was the largest community that we had regionally. And so we decided to really double down on that region, partner with KBW to have a big shock and awe moment. And that was, of course, a great decision. But leading up to that decision, that came from a very dedicated sprint cycle. And when you think about what you have to do to launch such a large project, you want to break it into chunks and manageable things that are not overwhelming. So you have the end goal in mind, and then you kind of create a Gantt chart. That's a dependency chart of what needs to happen in order for certain things to be fulfilled. And we started with the basics, right? What are the tokenomics? What is this actually priced at? How are we going to make the most utility for the protocol, the investors, and the community? And then you start figuring out what dependencies that you have on the supply side for a layer 1 and for an infrastructure that allows the demand side to be fulfilled. If you want to build on Zero G, of course, we've got infrastructure that we built, but there's a lot of things that exist today, such as developer tooling, infrastructure, cross-chain nodes, indexers, et cetera, that people need to build. So you need to partner with those folks, go through the procurement process, negotiation, integration cycles, integration fees, making sure that they are able to support you by the time that you need them. That's a huge effort in itself that then unlocks the demand side. So through, I'd say, twice a week leadership sprint and check-in, we were able to do that asynchronously, but leading up to TGE, we all gathered together in Jeju Island, which is a little volcanic island off the south of Korea. And the reason that we chose Jeju Island is there's nothing that's happening in Jeju Island. It's just a volcanic island. So there's no distractions. You've got restaurants, and you've got hotel rooms, and you've got a boardroom. I saw nothing else. I never even saw the volcano. It's probably beautiful, but I was focused on the execution of the protocol, and I thought it was a good time to, come together. And boy, a lot of midnight oil there for sure, and Korean barbecue, of course. delivered.
You know, Jake, after we chatted, I had to look up Jeju Island, and it's absolutely beautiful. Sorry that you didn't have a chance to explore any of it. You guys were really preparing for war, it seems like.
We stayed at a theme park, Jeju World, and it was more of the spot that had like a conference center, so it made sense. But I remember, and to put it into context, I got a voucher when I checked into the hotel for a free ride on the roller coaster. I never redeemed it.
That's just going to be your TGE. Did you tell him that?
Yeah, well, I guess the analogy is definitely present there, but if anyone wants the voucher, I still have it, so take the ride.
I would like the voucher.
You got it.
All
You got it, Kev.
All right, thanks, Jake. Kevin, let's turn over to the capital markets side. So if the project's TGE War Room is their mission control, I'm expecting that you're sort of directing air traffic control on your side. So talk to us about what a war room looks like from sort of the market making trading perspective and navigate through that process.
So I like your analogy, but the one that we use internally is that the teams that we're supporting are NASCAR drivers, and we're the pit crew, right? So like we have like our 6 or 7 team members that come out, swarm around the car. They have 8 seconds to get their job done. If you fuck it up, you get in trouble very quickly. And you know they do this so many times that they get very good and very efficient at exactly what their role is. And that's very much how we see this. You know, we do about 1 launch a week approximately.
Wow.
So we get in a lot of reps, and we have the chance to go through this process. For us, what it really looks like is we have our marching orders from the teams ahead of time. The day of the launch, the most important thing is working with the exchanges. So we have one team member that's talking to the project and helping make sure that any changes that happen to the plans that we've made together are being followed. But the most important thing is working with the exchanges, because the exchanges have all sorts of requirements that they place upon the market makers the day of launch. You know, you have to deposit tokens on XYZ chain at least 8 hours ahead. You have to start placing orders within like an hour before the launch. You know, you have to structure it in a certain way. So pretty much it's on the project to get it to the point of TGE, and then on the day of TGE, like pretty much all the requirements are on the market makers to follow through on the operations that make it actually happen on the exchanges. So a lot of pressure. You only have a few seconds to do it. Our NASCAR team does pretty well on the crew part of it. And yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Love the analogy. And, you know, I didn't even realize all the pre-coordination steps that you had to do. So thanks for like underscoring that for a lot of the founders in the room here that probably need to get ahead of the game when they're coordinating with their market makers. So TGE War Room check, but, you know, we want to rewind a little bit back to the decision about when to launch tokens, right? And that could be based on a number of factors. Claire, I want to start with you guys because Aztec took a very different approach from what I've seen in that the TGE launch date decision was a community decision based on a governance vote in which the core team didn't seem to have obviously a lot of control over when to launch the token.
None.
Walk us through that process and what was the decision behind that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think like Aztec is very much a team that's building like from principles that I think, you know, are at the heart of this industry, right? That it should be decentralized and permissionless, and that, you know, no single party or no majority party should control a network. And so our network is controlled by I don't have the exact count now, but about 5,000 sequencers. It changes every minute. There's a live dashboard. So it's controlled by them, and they all have the power to participate in the governance process. So anyone who had bought a token in our token sale, those folks could all vote in the governance process. And what was kind of like hard-coded in was that we could TGE 90 days from the start of our sale. So, I mean, that was just a fact, and someone could propose it, and if the community voted on it, then it would go through. And so that's what happened. And so within that, you know, no one on the team could participate in that process because we didn't have tokens from the sale, and no insiders could participate. And so it was really token holders as well as primarily our stakers who, you know, operate a large portion of the network, own a large portion of the network. So yeah, I think, you know, we saw around the time that we TGE'd a few projects coming out and delaying their TGE or delaying ICOs or canceling it for different reasons. And, you know, some of them are good, some of them I didn't think were that good. It's obviously a decision the project makes, but fundamentally couldn't make that decision, right? Our community and our governance process had made the decision for us. And so then it was just a matter of, okay, the market is what it is, and what can we control, and how can we do the best job that we can, knowing that like Aztec's been building for 8 years, and we plan to build for many more. And so if you look at it in a long time horizon, I think there's no reason to feel panicked. And some of you may agree with this, you may disagree with this. I personally love launching in bear markets, and that's just me.
Thank you. And actually, Claire, I don't know if you saw on X, but Hasib from Dragonfly put out a post last week. Did you see that? Where
I saw.
He vibe coded a app in which he compared token launches from bear markets to bull markets through, he used a number of assumptions, but I think he looked at Binance listing announcements and determined that there was no statistically significant difference between bear market and bull market token launches, which I thought was pretty interesting. So
I think a lot of projects' decision making is determined based on their time horizon, right? If you look at things and you think, we think we'll be around for a year, that would feel really good for us, then yeah, maybe you do need to launch in a bull market, right? But if you're like, we're going to be around for a decade, you launch when you're ready, and then you continue to deliver on your roadmap. So yeah, we felt really confident in our decisions, and I think launching in a bull feels good in the short term and bad in the long run, and launching in a bear feels bad in the short term and good in the long run. And since we're a long-term oriented project, I wouldn't have done it any other way.
Thank you. So, Jake, let's pivot to your exchange listing partners. Zero G obviously had a large-scale launch, billion-dollar FTV. I think the last time we chatted, you corrected me, in which you had 30-plus exchanges that you had to coordinate with, and 2 top Korean exchanges, Upbit and BitThump, which are very difficult to get for day one listings. So I imagine there was a lot of coordination efforts that your team had to go through during the war room experience. Can you kind of talk us through the process? Like, how far in advance did you connect with the exchanges? What was the process like? What are some negotiation tactics that you used, to close all of these exchanges alongside KBW?
Yeah, I think maybe to double down on that last kind of timing question, an arrow never lands higher than it's aimed, and you need to kind of hard code an internal objective to reach, because otherwise we just keep delaying. And what was great about the way that we approached this is that we had product and tech readiness and a checklist, where if we're not ready on the product side, we're not going to launch a half-baked product. That's very important. That's honestly mission number one. And then there's the external community incentive, right? I mentioned KBW earlier. That is during a certain time of the year. So we wanted to lean into being product and tech ready by KBW, which really influenced the sprint cycle. We were able to achieve product and tech readiness before the actual KBW went live, but as you alluded to, it takes a lot of coordination across exchanges, and from what I perceived on the experience, it's all a game of poker. You're sitting there with 30 plus exchanges, you all got your cards tight to the chest, and none of them want to make a move before they know they've got leverage, and the negotiations without leverage are very, let's say, cannibalizing, to put it in a very blunt term. They want as much as they can, they want to make sure that they're making money on it, and they may or may not see the long-term vision. But one thing that was very paramount with our conversations with exchanges was the utility of the token. They really wanted to dive into the token sinks, the value securing mechanisms, how this all works. And we submitted, documents that were 30, 40 pages to each exchange, explaining the protocol, the tokenomics, the investors, how this works, how each layer of the stacks works, and then they evaluate it. And of course, they need to get back with their own commercials, but there's the integration cycle. We're our own layer 1 blockchain, so these exchanges need to natively integrate our blockchain to support our token in most cases. So that has its own time frame. And then what I could at least leave the audience today with a kind of key takeaway is that when you have that first name fall, maybe it's a strategic name or just any name, the rest typically follow a little bit easier. So for for the example that I'll allude to, we had Binance Spot list our futures market, and then all of a sudden, cascading amounts of exchanges came in. They're like, well, Binance must have done their DD. All right, we're in. And then at that point, you can be a little bit more proactive with how this is positioned long-term. And the way that we took our partnerships with the exchanges into that long-term vision was ensuring that their community, their participants on the platform, were able to engage in, let's say, having exposure to decentralized AI, but also ensuring that there's fundamentals like staking and rewards campaigns that keep them along for the whole journey and not just collecting the short-term incentives and bouncing to the next project.
Amazing, Jake. And that must have been a lot of last-minute momentum in the poker game analogy that you used with closing all those exchanges at the 11th hour. So super, exciting to hear that process. Kevin, quick question for you. So there's obviously a lot of buzz about, the tier 1 listings and having strong distribution, and it's important to get those. But I think projects are thinking about things a little bit differently in this market in particular. Can you kind of give us your perspective based on market insights or any data that you're looking at? Like, is it make or break if you have a tier 1 exchange listing? Is it necessary? Can you still have a optimal TGE, let's say, with a non-tier 1?
There have been a lot of projects recently that have kind of made it like their life's mission not to have to give up tremendous amount of incentives to the exchanges in order to get them to list. So a few examples of that recently are like Monad, Lighter. Obviously, like these like super premier tier 1 projects have kind of risked the house in exchange for having an opportunity to go through the listing process without having the tier 1 exchanges as part of it, since those folks are a little bit less likely to play ball, as you were alluding to. What we've found from our research, which we've compiled research over this for like the last like 2 weeks, we did a bunch of like historical analysis on this. The tier of exchange, like the top tier of exchange that does listing for a project, doesn't really correlate to the financial outcome for the listing, which is kind of interesting. Like you'd expect like, oh, hey, if I list on the best possible exchange, I would expect the best possible outcome. But that's certainly not what the data says. There's actually a sweet spot right in the middle of, like from like tiers like 1 to 4, like someone that you would eyeball at like 2.5. Actually, historically, for all the launches of the last like 3 months or so, drive the best outcomes for everyone. So food for thought. There's definitely room to be creative for founders, not just to follow the same playbook as everyone else.
Thanks for those insights, Kevin. And I think that's like really important data to reference, for a lot of these projects that are looking to launch and making decisions about the terms and the allocations and so on and so forth. So, Jake, quick question for you. What happens if an exchange sort of doesn't honor the terms of your agreement? Let's say they go rogue. I know Zero G had sort of a public spat, and we won't name the exchanges or anything like that. And without tripping any confidentiality or legal wires, do you have any sort of insights that you can share for founders in this room to sort of protect against or prevent that from happening in the future?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the exchange business model, of course, if they're not supporting your asset, they're not able to generate revenue on the asset, and then their competitors will. So there's FOMO there that helps to the project's advantage, right? If you are listed on all their competitors and they're not supporting it, then, well, I guess you're not going to make the revenue off of it, and that's no skin off our project at this point. But to directly address maybe the adversities of some exchanges, this gets down to the ethos of Web3 in general. There was paper promises made across all of these different exchanges. I mean, we're talking with them, we're sending a DocuSign, and we are agreeing on terms that are pencil paper, when in reality, I think we should eat our own dog food and then ensure that the cryptographic guarantees of the way that the blockchain space works perhaps could be implemented into the ways that we interact with exchanges, with escrow contracts, certain inputs and outputs to ensure that they're living up to their actual deliverables. And then, of course, funds or inventory can be unlocked based on those proofs, to say, on chain. So my key advice to people that are going through this process is do not take every contract at face value. They have a tremendous amount of power, and they will act however they want, and then you're left holding the bag and trying to, clean up the pieces. But if there's ways that we can implement the tech that we evangelize on every stage here to make that process more transparent and cryptographically secure, that would be, a step in the right direction.
I think that's a really important thought and note. And, obviously we want to use, blockchain technology to prevent against, those issues. So thank you for that. Kevin, we have very little time left. So I wanted to take a little bit of time and talk about market maker and sort of the liquidity process with the token launch, because it's very critical to a token's success, right? So given your expertise, can you kind of walk us through, two things? One, as a founder or a project, what sort of selection criteria should you consider when choosing a market maker? And two, walk us through the various business models or ways that you can engage with the market maker and some of the trade-offs of those.
Do we have 30 minutes?
I wish we did. Do we have 30 minutes? No? Okay.
I guess the things that founders should look out for, it's really hard to assess the differences between market makers. Most people don't have the expertise to do so, and even if you do, most people don't, no one has actually the data necessary to do those comparisons. So the reality is, it's pretty much all on referral basis, word of mouth. And the best thing that you can do is do some reference checks, find who a market maker has worked with, talk to those folks, and kind of get a gut feeling on, did they do their job? Did they do it honorably? Did they do it with a level of professionalism that makes you inspired that they can do that same job for you with a high level of quality? I honestly don't think beyond that there's a ton that can be done with the current market structure. There are a lot of technology firms that are working on solutions for this, ways to compare market makers based on trading data, based on access to historical deal flow, where you can kind of put together a more holistic view of what's happening, but they're not there yet. So where the market's at right now is it's pretty much based on trust, and the only way that you can really attain trust is based on the folks that have worked with them previously. To succinctly break down, most market makers either do a loan and call option or a retainer model. And the big difference is who's in charge of what gets to happen. In the retainer model, normally it's the project that's in charge of the trading, of the decisions around liquidity. In the loan and call option, it's pretty much up to the market maker. There are pros and cons of both. You really need to dive into the specifics of the deal. Generally, the retainer model is more in favor of what the project wants to achieve. We probably have to stop there. We probably don't have time to break it down entirely, but I'm more than happy to talk about it.
Thank you. And I think the point is that the model that you choose is important, and it's critical to sort of the success of your token launch. So, walk through the various points that Kevin had mentioned and, pick the right model, for your token launch. So I just want to take a quick minute, because this is my favorite part of today's segment, and that is as much planning that you do for your TGE, as much contingency planning that you do, and all the work that you put in, there's inevitably going to be things that go wrong. And so if you guys could take a quick 30 seconds to share your oh shit moment, and maybe there was more than one oh shit moment, but talk us through the war story, and what do you want to leave the founders here today with, because they're probably going to go through some of the same things. Claire?
I have to say our TGE was smooth in terms of, again, what we could control. Our oh shit moment was the market really started to turn down several days before. And of course, it made us nervous, and we were concerned, and then there's a lot of parties in a negotiation for a TGE, market makers and exchanges, and so, does anyone now feel that they need to renegotiate things, right? So it kind of kicked up a big cycle of uncertainty for us, but, I think my advice is it's like any launch. What are you optimizing for and over what time horizon? If you can answer those things, and you know what you're willing to walk away from, then your decisions become very easy. And so that was out of our control. Nothing we can do except know what we're optimizing for over what time horizon and where we're willing to walk away. And we went forward.
Jake?
Find the most mission-critical partners to your launch and make sure you have their home phone, their cell phone, their girl's friend's phone, their dog's name, whatever you can do to ensure that they're on your side and they're going to go the extra mile if some shit breaks. is mission critical. We had that. Thankfully, the relationships that we curated in the space went the extra mile for when all of a sudden a brand new blocker popped up. They were up at 3 a.m. solving this, moving mountains for us in seconds. And that allowed us to do what we needed to do. So go off, make those relationships this week. Take them out to dinner, buy them a steak, whatever. Make sure they're going to go the extra mile for you because it's either go or no go, and those people make it happen.
Kevin?
Mine's really simple, redundancy, right? Have multiple wallet systems, have multiple market makers, have multiple plans for everything you're trying to do. One of the worst scenarios that happened for us on a launch in the last 6 months or so is we were market making for the launch of something on Coinbase. We deposit to our Coinbase account. The deposit never showed up in our Coinbase account. Coinbase can't launch the market because there's no market maker for it. We were the only market maker on the launch. And then we have to go through the process of figuring out why the deposit didn't show up with the Coinbase team. And there was some small bug that was related to the integration of that chain itself. But that whole thing delayed their Coinbase launch by about 6 hours.
Wow.
Which is horrible. So redundancy is key. And I say that it's better for us to be one of at least 2 trading firms that are part of a launch. Because we're not perfect. I would really like to be. We're 99.9% perfect, but we're not 100% perfect. Or the systems that we're working with aren't perfect. So redundancy is key.
Thank you. And I think a quick summary is that chaos is part of the process. And the teams that win are not the ones that avoid fire, but they're the ones that sort of build the systems, the war rooms, the relationships, obviously the market-making partnerships to actually withstand their token launches and be successful. So thank you to our war heroes today for sharing their stories. Sorry for going over on time, and thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.